With that, our second speaker is Toastmaster Josh Harris. He is a former president of Winter Park Toastmasters. And he is here to talk about how our world and our own lives are driven by reactions to stress and chaos, including those so-called black swans. But fear not, as Josh will explain why these often bad events may actually be good through the process known as anti-fragility. Please welcome Toastmaster Josh Harris.
Fellow Toastmasters, member of the head table, guest, have you ever had a shockingly bad event occur in your personal life? Perhaps in your friends' lives, your family's life? The answer is a resounding yes, because that's part of being human. Happens to our world. Unfortunately, you can turn on the news pretty much any given day of the year, and let's be honest, something bad just happened. These moments are bad, and you probably wondered, how will you recover? What will happen? In the moments afterwards, or perhaps the weeks, the years, sometimes even the decades, just never know. Imagine there was a button before you, and all you had to do was press that button, and you could be teleported back and that bad event didn't happen. Instant restoration, right? I'm sure for a while afterwards you're like, I will press that button if it existed. Show me the button, please. Where's that button? Now time will march on, and hopefully, but not always, you will recover. And there'll come to a point where things will have changed in your life. You will have seen, you will have learned, you'll have grown. You'll say, you know what? I will not press that button. I'm going to let it be. You've achieved resiliency at this moment. You've bounced back. We talk about resiliency a lot. We talk about resilient cities in terms of floods and hurricanes. Resiliency to job loss, to divorce or relationship loss. Loss of loved ones, right? Now, there are some things, like I said, are just awful. And obviously, when we talk about death, there's no recovery. I can promise you that, certainly for the person. There comes a point, though. Maybe this takes years. Certainly unlikely to be hours. Where you no longer are seeking a button that you would not press, that you maybe once have pressed. If you're now faced with a different decision, the button is presented to you, but this time, you have to press that button to make the bad thing occur. Because if that didn't happen, you would not have gotten to where you are now. If you come back and can look at those moments and say, in honest truthfulness, yes, I would push that button, sustaining the pain, causing whatever loss that happened, to get to where you are now, to go through the learning, go through the process. Ladies and gentlemen, you experienced anti-fragility. Anti-fragility, things that gain from disorder. It is both a process as well as a state. Who has ever done any strength training, weightlifting, right? And whether you ever have, you understand the process. You lift muscles. What happens? You lift your weights. The muscles tear. You are damaging them. Afterwards, they grow back faster and stronger because they fuse and more muscle is present. That is an anti-fragile growth process. This was explained well in a book called Anti-Fragility by one of my favorite authors, Nassim Nicholas Taleb. His prior book was called The Black Swan. Black swan are these really bad events that are essentially unpredictable and have major consequences. There is no frivolity in a black swan. The most recognized one is probably 9/11. People also look at the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. And I think for many people, while there's some debate about whether a pandemic can qualify, COVID-19 would fit as a black swan event. No one was expecting the NBA season to just get canceled in March of 2020 and all European flights to be banned, right? Yet there we were. I went back and reread Nassim's book because I figured we're living a black swan. I should read the book, The Black Swan. It had been many years. There was an interesting quote that I'm going to paraphrase. The world is defined by black swans, and pretty much all major actions, even into your individual lives, were the result of the black swans. Now, not all black swans are bad. That's a misnomer. Many are good, actually. In fact, people consider the invention of these stupid little things, these iPhones, to be a positive black swan. True. Meeting your significant other could be a black swan. Now, I will let you debate that was a good or a bad black swan, because some of you probably had different reactions. But nonetheless, it was sudden and it was highly impactful. I put these concepts together, and that's when it occurred. We grow, the world is actually pretty anti-fragile. If it wasn't for these big negative events, we probably wouldn't grow forward. Now, I've been an economist giving these interesting talks and having to make interesting connections, explain the world. In fact, one of the most fun ones I ever did was I like to point out these negative headlines. And I started off, the first one, I'm kidding you not, when I did this little paradigm, Ebola's in America. Remember that back 2015? There was like one person. I believe one person actually died who got it. I believe in Africa, then like 2 or 3 other people got it. Didn't have anything happen. I knew that these things could happen. Now, about a year ago, I experienced what would ultimately be a black swan. My company I was working with went through a major restructuring, and I was no longer going to be with them. Now, some good things happened at this moment. Working for the corporate America, you know, your restricted stock suddenly becomes yours to sell and keep, which is pretty awesome. I decided to use this to move back to Orlando. Interestingly, about a week after this happened, I get a note on LinkedIn from one of my connections offering me the keynote speaking position at the lunch-in of the Commercial Real Estate Women's Network's conference in Atlanta the following year. Had that email come in before, I would not have been able to charge, because there had been a corporate goodwill engagement, as they would say. I was able to state a rate, and I had quickly realized it was the highest rate I'd ever stated, and rates had gone up. I was being quite anti-fragile in my own growth. I look back at my own life and I realized every bad thing that's occurred, and I've experienced many of the big long list, because everybody has, I would not have grown or been where I was if it wasn't for them. And yeah, I pressed the button. So my message to you, my hope for you, if you're going through something bad, because it will happen, and unfortunately, not to be the bearer of bad news, bad things are going to happen, globally and personally. Sorry, that's called the world. You may not need to celebrate that day. I'm not going that far. But recover yourself and realize there is a potential that this could have been the best thing that ever happened to you. You may not know it at the time. You may not know how nor why. But once you understand anti-fragility and the role of black swans in our world, I promise you this, it will all make sense. And one of my favorite lines to use to explain the world is, the world actually keeps getting better and better, yet we think it's falling apart because we only focus on the negative. Fellow Toastmasters.